Have you ever wanted to make your photos look like this, or even this, but have no idea how to edit them like that and don't want to buy a mist filter? Well, what if I told you all you needed was one video and it's the one that you're watching right now? I'm Ayits Photography, an online photographer known for looking a lot like Ron Weasley and also giving you guys settings and teaching you guys how to edit your photos to look a certain way. And the one I get by far the most is how I get that dreamy glow on my photos. Throughout all my editing phases, one of my most noticeable traits is how I edit color and how I make it have kind of a dreamy glow. Whether it's night shots or even landscape shots, I use it on almost every photo, and it's such a fun technique to make your photos shine even more. And after this video, you're going to know exactly how to replicate it on your own photos, and I'm gonna explain how it works exactly so you can use it and build your knowledge from there. This tutorial will be using the app Lightroom, as you might know from that, but also you can use it in any type of Lightroom if you want to do Lightroom mobile, Lightroom desktop, Lightroom for PC, anything works, classic or not. So I'm just gonna be using classic for today, but you can use whatever you'd like. This effect is one of my favorites and I can't wait to show you guys, so I think I should stop yapping and just get into the actual tutorial. So let's get started. Now, by the end of this tutorial, your photo should look something like this. And I know that's a crazy transformation, but it's really only a couple settings and it's a couple traits I'll explain to you as we go along. So here we have a baseline photo with only minor edits to it. And the first thing we're gonna talk about is using clarity and dehaze. And I think you're gonna use it in a way that you haven't before. Now, famously with clarity, the first thing we want to do is make the photo more clear. I mean, as it's called clarity, you probably want to make it more defined, more obvious, more HD. And sometimes that's okay. In a photo like this, upping the clarity doesn't do that much and isn't that horrible. But in a photo like this, upping the clarity just makes it look gross. Everything's so muddled together, the darks are way too dark, and it's overall just a mess, and we don't want that. It is such a common mistake when you're starting out editing to just blast that clarity in every single photo, because you want your photos to be more clear, you want them to be more HD, you want to make them more nice, but sometimes that's not what the photo calls for, and understanding when you should do that and when you shouldn't is a huge factor. Take this photo for example. This photo is a perfect use of using clarity because of its defined sky, defined edges, and you want to make the details pop out of that car. Versus something like this, you don't need the details to pop out there. It's foggy, it has lots of color. You want to let that kind of speak for itself. And a lot of the time when you're having dreamy photos, you want to have that color and light speak for itself. This of course varies from photo to photo depending on your lighting conditions, but ultimately I think that -40 clarity and about -40 dehaze is the perfect amount to have that little bit of extra glow. And as you can see, it's not a super noticeable effect, but if you kind of zoom in, you can see the smaller details of the light and the shadows that we're going to accentuate later with the tone curve. Now, what I think is one of the biggest elements to this look that often goes unrecognized is the tone curve and how you use the tone curve to accentuate the light. Now, I've gotten my fair share of comments being very confused what the hell this tone curve is, but I promise you it's not as complicated as it seems. It's just a harder way of doing exposure that takes some time to master. Just a basic rundown before we get into editing the photo, your tone curve is basically editing your light directly. As you can see, the different points that we grab from are the different points that get brighter. And you'll see this a lot in presets and basic edits. Say, for example, the S-curve is a very common way of making your photos a lot more contrasted, and vice versa for making stuff less contrasted, which is often used for stuff like black and white edits or wedding photography. But what we're doing here is not only making it glow, but we're taking parts of the light that actually already exist, and we're just making them a lot brighter and more visible in the photo. All those elements of glow already exist in your photos, you just can't see them. And especially if you're shooting raw, it's really easy to get them back if you directly edit them with the tone curve. This isn't doable with something like the exposure tab, because the exposure tab is just a general roundup of all the light. It is taking the shadows, it is taking the lights. But what we're doing here is finding those direct little pieces of light and editing them to be brighter. And not only that, we're going to use the color tone curve to take out the colors as well and make them even accentuate further. Trust me, this is way less complicated than I'm making it seem. It's honestly just the way the light works in a photo, and if you want to have the best results, you can just copy what I'm doing on screen. But if you want to know for the future, if you want to make your own presets and have that own editing style, it's good information to know because it's something I had to learn and it took me a long time to realize what the hell I was saying just 2 minutes ago. So trust me. All we're going to do is lower the lights just a tad bit and raise those shadows in the general tone curve. Sort of like that. That should be pretty good. And all you want to do is make points at all the main points of light in your photo and make a little bit of an S curve and kind of have the highs be high and the lowers be low. Something sort of like this. Yeah, and make sure that the colors evenly match without all the tone curves, because your color tone curve is still going to edit your colors, but if you edit them all the same, the light will be the exact same and everything, so you won't have to worry. And just make them all the same. So if you're just following along, you can copy something like this, and it should look like this now. And I haven't fixed the exposure, but once you rise it, you can start seeing exactly what I'm doing here, and if you zoom in, those colors are really starting to pop out. And the color tone curve will kind of edit your photos with this kind of color grade, and if you like it, nice, but we're gonna talk about how to change it with color grading and white balance in just a minute. Editing your tone curve this much will make your photos a little bit darker, and this might be an issue if you shoot higher ISOs, but if you have a full frame camera, if you have denoise, you should be fine, and we're gonna up the exposure right now. If you just raise your exposure, you might be happy with the result, but I find it kind of overexposes the highlights too much because of the tone curve, but if you just change the highlights and do these little steps, it makes it look a lot better. So what I do is pretty simple. I just lower the highlights by about 50%, I up the shadows by however much is needed, and I up the whites by half of that. And that in itself is usually pretty good. It shows your glow, it shows all the elements you want to see, and it's a very noticeable difference from the before. And I find contrast is either on one or the other side. I think lowering it can look good in some photos and upping it can look great. But I think in this photo, lowering it is perfect because we have a lot of strong whites already. We don't need a lot more contrast. And now from there, our photo's looking pretty friggin' awesome. And honestly, sometimes I stop here, but if you wanna make it more specific and you wanna get those nicer colors, we're gonna talk about that now with HSL, color grading, and white balance. Now, much like other edits, a lot of the importance with editing comes from our oranges and our blues. And I think that's the same thing with these edits. You don't want to push the blues too hard or the oranges, but I find that editing them to be a bit more bright and accentuated is always the move. And after kind of eyeballing it, seeing what looks best for the photo, I'm pretty happy with it there. And once we finally get down to color grading, it is entirely up to you guys how you want to make your edits look. This is the most fun part because we've done all the hard parts of light and color, and now you can just choose exactly what palette you want to have your photo be. Now for me personally, I love blues. I love that kind of neon cyberpunk look, and I find just putting it over the blue and green area makes it look great almost immediately. And just like that, I would leave it there. I'd probably leave it there. But if you want to get a bit more customization with the color, it is all up to you with the highlights and midtones. There's lots of options you can do, lots of different colors. The world is your oyster, and go crazy. I don't know why I said the world's your oyster. And then from there, you can just make your white balance look however you'd like it to. You can make it look super warm, super cool, super, green, purple, realistic. I don't care. The world is free. It is all yours to change it, and there's no rules. So go crazy. Then from there, save that preset, name it, something to do with me, because I'm cool. Just kidding, don't do that. And then put on any photo you want. Portrait, landscape, night photography, it is all yours. And here's a couple photos that I edited from today's preset. How am I doing editing that? I hate this guy. And that'll do it with today's video and tutorial. And if you stayed this long, I have a surprise for you. In the description is a full preset with every single one of these edits for completely free on my Gumroad. Give it a test, give it a try, see how it looks in your photos, and ultimately, if you like that photo, I have tons of other packs for sale that have summer, have film presets, everything you'd like, and I'd love the support. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like, subscribe, do all that junk that every YouTuber tells you to do, and I am sure I'll see you guys in the future with more editing videos like this. But I hope to see your photos looking hella dreamy, colorful, and awesome. I'll see you guys on the next one. Fuck, I told myself I was not gonna do that. I was gonna, bye guys, bye-bye.